Okay, so today is August the 14th, and welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And this whole power going out has definitely been a very interesting experience. It went out. It's not unusual in this climate in the winter for the power to go out for just a little while, ice storms, whatever, but they're used to it here. They're prepared for 6-7 months of snow. And when things warm up a little bit, then it melts and it causes ice. And of course, the power lines are underground because the ice would bring them down because of the weight of the ice. But every now and again, there's a little power outage, but it doesn't last long. This time it lasted about 3 hours. And it was just a wonderful time. I was watching my little grandson so upset that he couldn't watch his television, and my daughter and her husband trying to figure out, okay, how do we make coffee? They just moved into this house not too long ago. And I was like, use the gas stove, because their old house, they had electric stove. And when the power went out, they couldn't do anything. I'm like, you have a gas stove. And my daughter went to turn it on, but it wouldn't turn on because it has an electric igniter. So her husband said, you got to use a lighter. And she's like, oh, wow. I didn't know that. So it was funny for me because I grew up in the Dominican Republic. And when I was growing up back in I was born in 61, in the 60s, 70s in the Dominican, power went out all the time. We had a generator at the house. Everybody had a generator, and the power would go out from the city, the government electricity, and everybody would turn on their generators to finish dinner or whatever it was. And it always went out in the afternoon. So we never had power when we ate. We always pretty much ate. What the generator provided some electricity, so there was some light, but we always ate with the background humming of the generator. This is very, very loud. Can you imagine the technology of that all those years ago? So I was sitting here chuckling and just sitting with this, what if, and I really am one of those believers that this world is moving towards a time when we have to have some very, very important conversations, because the systems that we have are not sustainable. The power grids are not sustainable. So many of the channelers that I like to listen to, and in my own intuition, my own guidance that I receive, is that we've got to go back to doing things locally. Tesla, this brilliant man, I guess has been over 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago, gave us this wonderful information about how to have free electricity. Much simpler, easier ways of getting electricity than all of these power grids that we have set up that are monopolies. Very, very few corporations own them. And we are being moved in very quickly. Humanity is moving towards this time of bifurcation. Bifurcation just means a splitting of timelines. What that means is that those who want to play the game of being human from a higher frequency, those who want to stop listening to the ego and moving to listening to God, we are ascending. Excuse me. We are ascending in frequency. If you're a student of the teachings of Dr. David Hawkins, that was his life's work, was to show us that our thoughts are in alignment with a specific frequency. Low vibrating thoughts, low frequency thoughts, are the thoughts of fear, the thoughts of hate, of anger, of jealousy, of greed. Those are the thoughts of the ego. So humanity is at a point now, and Course in Miracles tells us that we have to make a choice. And now the choice, I'll talk a little bit about the importance of the choice, but at the same time, the Course tells us that nothing can possibly be wrong. Nobody's doing anything wrong. Nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to be, in terms of souls, the eternal part of who we are is not going to be affected by anything that we do based on our ego. However, we in this human incarnation have the experience of consequences to our choices. So humanity is at a point that it has to make a choice. Are we going to listen to the ego, or are we going to listen to God's voice? Well, to listen to God's voice, we've got to understand that we have to cultivate a relationship with God of our own understanding, not of the church's understanding. That means that we have to expand our awareness about how things are. Where did things come from? Who made things up? And most humans, when we are conditioned in the traditional schooling systems, we are conditioned to trust the authority, the teacher in front of the classroom, to trust the government because they're the government, to trust those who have the degrees because, well, they know more than we do. So we have been little by little conditioned out of our own discernment. So many things are happening at one time. People are waking up, questioning, why does the government think that they have so much power over us? Well, because we gave it to them. Our Constitution, our founding fathers wrote it in such a way to remind us that it's for the people, but it's by the people, not by those who become lifelong politicians. Nowhere in our Constitution does it say the politicians get to rule, but we, the people, were supposed to serve. We, the people, were supposed to participate, go in there for your 4 years, your 8 years, and then you're out. You go do service, you come up with rules and regulations, and then you go live under those rules and regulations like everybody else does. You don't make up rules that you then don't live by because you're a 40, 50, 60-year politician that gets to circumvent all of those things. None of those rules apply. And we're seeing how that's playing out. The politicians who buy stocks when they know that they're about to approve something that benefits a particular sector. We watched that happen during the shots. When the shots came out, we found out that many politicians had purchased stocks in some of those big pharmaceutical companies right before things happen. In the pharmaceutical companies that produce those shots, they had some of the highest profits that they'd had in years, but nobody goes after them. Why? Because the system is stacked to protect their own. They protect themselves because many of them are career politicians. A lot of this is being shown in the education system. We're seeing it in the medical system. We're seeing it in so many areas where humanity is observing that those who take care of themselves are operating from ego. There is a component of power and greed, and Dr. David Hawkins speaks to this inside of the book, Power versus Force. And that's what the title is all about. When we connect with the power of God within, and we're listening to the voice for God, we operate with a heightened sense of community, of equality. We want the best for our brothers and sisters because we understand that we are connected. We're one. We want not just my children to be okay. We want all children to be okay. We don't want just this area to have clean water. We want everybody to have clean water. So to move into alignment with the voice for God requires that we become educated with what really is God. It cannot be the God that the church has talked about, because the God in so many of the religious teachings, that particular God is a God of punishment, a God of revenge, a God of, if you don't do it my way, you're going to be turned into a pillar of salt. So humanity has to get curious. Nobody enters a journey of transformation without curiosity. When I share the circle that was given to me to teach, which is the soul's journey, to get curiosity is a big part of it, is one of the stages we go through. We go through 6 stages. Well, that comes right after control. We have to be willing to give up control. We've got to be willing to say, is there another way? When we become curious, the ego gets curious with us. So it's one thing to get curious and learn new information and continue the process of curiosity to empty ourselves of the egoic information so that we can come to know only God's information, the ego goes along with us. That's why the ego gets spiritualized. That's why wonderful people who become spiritual, who begin to teach, they still have an ego. The ego still seeks power. The ego still seeks control. The ego still seeks wealth, and those things continue to happen. That's why lots of people who move up into churches and become leaders of the churches, and you find out dark secrets about them because the ego goes along for the ride. And it requires an incredible amount of commitment to move through the stages, the phases, the levels of consciousness to rid ourselves of the egoic thinking. Now, the ego is necessary to have a human experience. Without the ego, we wouldn't have a human experience, because the ego is what tells us that we're separate from God and separate from one another. And it allows us to have an identity as me separate from you. If we didn't have the ego, we would all be one big happy clump of souls having just a wonderful experience, but never having to deal with hunger and grief and my house and your house and my job and your job and my family, your family. It wouldn't happen because souls don't have it, that individualized, it's all about me and protection of it. But the ego does. But what is happening in this time of bifurcation? We are making a decision to, at the very least, become aware of the ego, become aware of the part of us that gets conditioned. And because it gets conditioned, and it gets conditioned by others, it can be manipulated. So many of us, if not all of us, when we are indoctrinated into beliefs that God is outside of us, that's manipulation. And why do you think that would happen? It's really for one reason, and that's control, because control is the hallmark of the ego. I'm going to control you so that I get my way. Because the ego is selfish, because the ego operates in me against you, me against the world, it is very selfish. And it wants to do things its way. It has its agenda, and it wants to win, and everybody else has to lose so that it can have power, it can have control. And because part of the ego's practice is greed, it can have all the money. It can be the winner. So in a world that has been divided into haves and have-nots, the 1%, the 99%, people are waking up. People are realizing in their everyday lives that we have been controlled, we have been manipulated, we have been trained into becoming worker bees and being so exhausted working. I don't know about you, but I remember growing up, I don't ever remember hearing my parents being so exhausted about work, couldn't wait for Friday to come along. They did their work, they did their whatever, however many hours, they came home. There was a much easier balance of work and life and family. There was always time to do family things. And I don't remember my parents just having 2 weeks of vacation a year. It seemed like we had a lot more. There was just a gentleness and ease about things. But then we began to become super indoctrinated with television, with movies and the internet and social media. And social media is a training ground for getting people to react to specific things, like it or don't like it. That's why we have those like buttons. Like it or don't like it. And if you like it, you're with this group. If you don't like it, you're with that group. And if you're with that group, then this says this about you. If you're with this group, this says that about you. And we argue with each other based on what I like or don't like. So the Course in Miracles is very specific that because our mind has been conditioned into believing things that have opposites so that there can be a right and wrong, we have lost our way, which is the middle way, God's way, which is the way of love, which is the way that we want for others, what we want for ourselves. So back to the point of choice, humanity is moving, whether people like it or not, whether people believe it or not, it does not matter. We are moving through stages of development, and either you understand that and you go along with the change and make a choice from your own understanding, your own discerning, or you're going to make a choice or unconsciously, and you're going to go with the crowd, and you're going to run with what you are told based on the ability to be controlled, which means you're going to follow who you think keeps you safe, who you think keeps you okay, and the one that you fear the least. That's not a conscious choice, but it is an unconscious choice. And then, because on this planet, in this world, in this third dimensional plane of existence, we experience, the course is filled with information that teaches we live by the consequences of our choices. There is a cause and effect. When we listen to the ego, there is a specific cause, low vibration, fear, marriages are not going to work, relationships are not going to work, you're never going to be happy at your job, you're always going to be chasing more, trying to acquire, trying to become it, you're never going to feel like there's enough, because the ego is about lack and limitation, haves and have-nots. And if you're on the side of the have-nots, you're never going to have enough. You're going to work your butt off, your fingers to the bone, as they say, and you will still not have enough, because the mind gets conditioned into scarcity. But if you make a choice but this requires an incredible amount of courage. And the course even says it in several places. It tells us all are given the option to wake up. Many will go down that path of curiosity. Few will reach the end point. And the reason few will reach the end point is because of the level of work that we have to do within ourselves. And everybody wants to, oh yes, I want to learn about love attraction and how to attract abundance. And I want to learn about making more money and attracting my soulmate, my second flame, or whatever, other flame, two flames. I can't remember all the terminologies that are used in the New Age movement. And we are seeking, we're curious. So curiosity kicks in, but it is all about what can I get? And we just finished studying, not while we were doing the lesson, but while we have been in chapter 30 in the new beginning. Actually, when we were, let's see, I'll tell you where that was. Yes, in chapter 30, in section number 3, it was an entire section about idols. The course was telling us how we have made idols of those outside of ourselves, put them on a pedestal, the government, the teachers, the media, the parents, the institutions, medical establishment. We've put it on a pedestal, movie stars, rock stars, athletes. We've put them on a pedestal, and we said, yes, you tell us who we are. We want to be like you. All of it to indoctrinate us. Well, where we are in this section that we're going to go into and continue where we had left off before, on June 26th was the last episode in this section. So we're going to continue from there. We are in section number 7, still in chapter 30 in the text. So chapter 30 in the text, called The New Beginning, section number 7, the new interpretation. And what the beginning of this particular section was telling us was that if God had left it up to us to basically run everything, we would be in trouble for sure. But God did not leave it up to us totally, but we do have free will. And this is part of what we also have been studying. The section, let me see, what number was it? Section, I can't. Oh yeah, section 2 inside of chapter 30 was about freedom of will. We have free will. And here's the beautiful thing about really understanding the truth about what's happening here. So imagine like there's a massive circle here, and God is in charge of everything, and we're inside of that circle, and this is our circle. And in our circle, we're in charge of our own lives, and we're in charge of our own reality. So in this circle, if we listen to the ego, we can screw things up, do beautiful things, but we're going to have the effect, the cause and effect of whatever our choices are. This little bit can be contaminated, can be made painful and lots of suffering, but it doesn't change what God is. It doesn't change the bigger circle. It's like, for example, if you think about in a city where I know when I grew up where it was beautiful pretty much everywhere, but there was one side of the tracks you didn't go to that side because that side was run down. It's where the bad people lived. It's where, you know, you just stayed away from that side, and all bad things happen in that area. But it was inside of a beautiful city, which was inside of a beautiful state, which was inside of a beautiful country, inside of a beautiful planet. So we have the ability with free will to create the wrong side of the tracks for ourselves. What is happening now is people are learning that to get out of the wrong tracks, they've got to change their mind. They can't keep thinking like people who've been conditioned to think in scarcity and poverty and stealing and hoarding and all of those things that bring about the effect of the wrong tracks, the wrong side of the tracks, if you will. So you got to get curious and begin to think differently. And we have seen that people who grow up poor and then get educated and they go on to do and achieve great wealth. People who grow up in an abusive situation and they grow up and make a decision, no, I'm going to do something different. People who grow up with alcoholic parents, I did, alcoholic dad, I made different decisions. I got curious. Well, what's life like without an alcoholic father? Well, then I made choices that led to the effect that I never married anybody who was an alcoholic. And I'm not a big drinker, so that wasn't part of my reality. But other people do the same thing. Why? Because we use our mind through our thinking to create experiences that have consequences. And humanity keeps doing the same thing, expecting different results because they don't understand what the Course is teaching us. We have two thought systems. We have to sort them out, and we have to get to the source of them. We have to understand the way the ego operates, very different than the way that God operates. When we connect with a part within us that unites us is because we've all come to understand that we're desiring what God desires for us. God desires for us. We've been given all this power to do whatever we want, and God welcomes each and every one of us back when we have our death experience. It's like the prodigal child. God says, okay, time for a party. Soul has returned to the all that isness, dropped the human identity. Those on the human plane, we feel bad and we grieve and, oh, we miss Lina, we miss whatever. But God's over here going, oh, your soul had a fabulous time being Lina down there. Okay, do you want to do it again? Then there's another lifetime. You get to play another role. So it is so important that we understand the power that we have at our disposal. It is the power of free will. And if there are things in your life that are not enjoyable, then you have the power to change them. But you cannot change them permanently if you continue to try to make those changes with your ego, because the ego is selfish. It does not care about the greater good. So everything is going to be temporary, because you cannot find eternal happiness, eternal peace, eternal joy while you're doing things short term for instant gratification. Just get the job for the money, or get the partner because you don't want to be alone, or sell your soul because you're afraid of getting sick or something. You have to understand who you are. This is the work of realizing we're not victims of anything. We are creators of our reality. And when somebody's in victim mode, they don't want to hear that they have power, because the story of the ego is invested in blaming who took my power away. It's not invested in let me reclaim my power. It's invested in if they stop doing what they're doing to me, I would be okay. And then, of course, you might be okay if you remove that person from your life or that situation from your life. You could be okay for a little while, but then you're going to have the same thing. And the reason is because we vibrate at a certain frequency that attracts to us same situations, different person, same situation, different job, same situation, different husband, different wife, same situation, because you haven't changed. You attract what you believe you deserve. And if the mind is in the place of ego, it only operates as a victim or a bully. That's it. There's no other way. And again, Jesus tells us in A Course in Miracles, many want change. Few will do the work, but even fewer will reach the destination of total liberation. Because to be totally liberated, you have to know that you and God are one. You've got to accept how powerful you are. You have to recognize that not only is God love, but you are a portal through which love enters into this physical plane. Everything you have to do must be done. Oh, Sandy, must be done for the greater good of all, because we're all one. We're all connected. And this is the work of becoming really humble and realizing if I and God are one, so is everybody else. And we can't treat them less than, because if we treat them less than, then we become a bully. We put ourselves back in that same egoic game of rights and wrongs, haves and have-nots. So the work of clearing up our mind is the work that takes, it takes lifetimes, but in this lifetime, we can do it in a relatively few decades. And by that, I mean, by questioning your thoughts, by really looking at what you believe and getting to the root of that belief. Where did this belief come from? Who taught me that I'm not good enough? Who said that I'm not lovable? Who said that I am not smart enough? Who said that I won't amount to much? And then you find out who said those things and you go, okay, that's your belief. It's no longer mine. But you have to decide not to believe that anymore. You have to decide to shift and lift to a higher frequency belief. So the work that we're doing through A Course in Miracles is training our mind to shift our thought system, to shift from thinking with the ego to thinking with God. And if God says that you are magnificent, then you must accept your magnificence, not with the ego's sense of, oh, yeah, I'm better than, but with the humility that says, if God created me amazing, then let me accept my amazingness. Let me live from that place. But here's the thing, so is everybody else. Whether they know it or not, that doesn't matter. When we're moving down the path of enlightenment, we have to recognize that everybody's the creator of their reality. This is the path of moving into acceptance that everybody gets to do whatever they want to do. And if some are going to choose to go down the path of density and stay in fear and stay in giving their power away, they have the right to do that because they have free will. But the work of those of us who are waking up, and listen, I went through a period where when I was receiving all this guidance, when I was studying all these books, I wanted to save everybody. I wanted my kids, I wanted my sisters, I wanted, my partners, I wanted my friends, I wanted all of them to go with me on this journey. I wanted everybody to see what they had been missing. And of course, it created a lot of rifts because they weren't ready. I was trying to wake them up and they weren't ready. I woke up. I was in the process of awakening, and the right teachings and the right teachers showed up for me, but I did not understand. I did not respect that they were still creators of their reality, because I hadn't fully gotten to the place that I knew that I was creating my reality. And I didn't have the humility yet. In the beginning stages of my journey, the first 10 years of this 20 plus year journey, I didn't have the humility. I had the know-how or the knowledge that we were all powerful creators of our reality, but I was still deciding, well, you haven't created a good reality and you haven't created a good reality, and okay, yeah, your reality is pretty good, but yours is not. So there was so much judgment because the ego goes with us on this journey. The ego is one of the last things that we're going to drop until we really ground ourselves in a relationship with God. The ego is still part of it because it has us think, I get to save you. So there's separation there. There's not an operating from oneness that says, well, we're all one and you go do your thing and when you have your death experience, you're going to be part of the same oneness. So it's okay. You're the prodigal child. And as many of you all know, I began to really learn that lesson when my son Spencer was going through his drug adventure. I had to release him, that if he died, he died. That was his path. That was not an easy thing for my ego to put up with, but it was what began to free my soul by understanding that he is not my son. He is my brother. He is my brother in Christ, my brother as a child of God, however you want to see it. It wasn't until I had to face the beliefs that I had around me thinking that I was superior to him and I knew what was best for him, that I began to see, wow, my spiritualized ego is trying to teach my son about spirituality. But you can't be teaching about spirituality if there's one who's higher than the other. If there's one here and I'm your savior and you need to be saved, that does not honor not only the free will, the power, but that's not loving. Because a message that is being sent is, you know, as he would say, you're just saying that I'm a fuck up because you know better for me. And I had to sit with, oh my gosh, that's exactly the message that I'm sending. So this journey through these teachings are very specific to have us face beliefs again and again and again that we must shift. We must stop thinking that way. And if the Course tells us, this is who you are according to God, then we've got to look at, why do we continue to argue with God? Why do we continue to want to do it our own way? In the introduction to the Course, we are told that we cannot alter the teachings. We have the ability to take what we want whenever we want to take it, but we cannot alter it. And the reason being, the ego likes to alter everything to suit its needs. I needed to be right about all this spiritual stuff so I could save my son. Well, God was telling me, you can't save your son. You don't even have a son. That's my son. And he's just playing the role of your son, but he's really your brother. He's really one with you. You can't save him because I already did. And I'm like arguing with God going, wait a minute, what do you mean you already saved him and he's here and doing drugs and could overdose and could die? How is that saving him? And God, very patient with me, when we would have our conversations, would just simply say, I gave him free will and he's just playing in the playground of addiction. That's okay. And God would very lovingly throw it back in my face and say, you've been playing in the playground of addiction too. You're addicted to what people think about you. You're addicted to margaritas. You're addicted to shopping. You're addicted to watching your special shows. And I don't judge you for that. Why are you judging him for being addicted to alcohol or drugs or whatever he was doing at the time? And I would have to say, well, it's like, wow, God, you don't judge me for anything. And here I'm using my spiritual knowledge to judge my son. He's just playing a role for me. He's a soul equal to me, playing a role so that I could see the conditioning that I have received that makes me think I'm the mother, I know better, because I watched too many episodes of Father Knows Best when I was little, and I really thought the parents knew better. So every situation that we have helps us see the beliefs that we still need to work through. So let's go to chapter 30, section number 7 in the Course in Miracles in the text. And we are in the new interpretation. And granted, we've been looking at this for a while. So I'm going to give us a quick little refresher through a couple of these things in the new interpretation, because today we're going to actually focus on starting in chapter 5, not chapter 5, in paragraph 5, because we've already covered these other paragraphs. They're in the videos that I did, episodes 151, 152, 153. If you want to go back and look at those on my YouTube. But in the first paragraph, after the title, the new interpretation, and understand, interpretation means we got to look at things differently. So when you see the world of the ego, then we've got to start interpreting the world that we see according to God's interpretation. So would God have left the meaning of the world to your interpretation? If he had, it has no meaning, because the ego, everything that the ego does is selfish. So thank God that God did not let us determine the interpretation of the world, only our perception of it. So then it goes on to say that, for it cannot be that meaning changes constantly and yet is true. If each one of us, having our own individual meaning, gets to be the one who decides the meaning of the world, we're in big trouble. I mean, look at the politics of today. We've got two sides. We're watching this more than ever, two sides. I'm with him, I'm with her, standing just totally, completely in opposition to each other. If God would have left the meaning of religion up to us, we've got these three major religions that perceive God totally differently: the Islamic religion, the Jewish religion, the Christians. And then we've got those who have philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism, totally different. Well, if God had left any one of us in charge of the interpretation of the meaning of the whole world, we would never get anything accomplished, because we all perceive things from a perspective. And a perspective is one speck of what is possible. Each one of us has one speck understanding of what is possible when we look at things through the ego's eyes. This is why we have to begin to interpret the world through God's eyes. And God says it's a playground. I created planet Earth and I gave you free will, and you all get to play the game however you want to play it. So the egos, all of our different egos, different cultures, different ways of looking at things, have different ideas of how women should be treated, how men should be treated, how boys should be treated, how girls should be treated. So we thank God, God is so brilliant. It's the world really is not up to our interpretation in terms of the bigger meaning of everything. That's part of what's happening right now. We're waking up to realize that whether you're in Europe or you're in South America, there is something that is calling out for change. But when we focus on the change that we want through the ego, we're looking at it through a selfish desire. What's in it for me? When we move out of that and say, well, what is it? What does my heart want? What is it that I really want? And we get to the conversations about, what does that mother or that father want for their child in India? What does that mother or father want for their child in Peru? What does that mother or child or father want for their child in America, in Sweden, in wherever? If we got to the heart of it, we would come closer to what God desires for us. They want to be loved. They want their children to be warm, to be safe, to be fed, to be educated, to be free. We all really want the same thing, but we don't get to the heart of the matter because the ego keeps us on the surface, on the appearances, on the what's in it for me. And that is part of what this chapter is wanting to us to understand. There is a new interpretation, but you got to get off your high horse, your egoic attempt to be the only one who's right, and you got to move to center. You got to move to the place where we can find the middle way. Then in paragraph number 2, we are told that, what do your scripts reflect except your plans for what the day should be? So all of us have a script. The Course in Miracles says that the script is written. We have an idea of what we want to do with our lives. We have a script. The script is of the ego. So our day goes according to the ego. And we have to recognize that when life happens and we go about our days, and sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's not so happy, all of it is according to the script that the ego has written. And the ego script is based on the beliefs that we hold. And if the beliefs are, there's not enough, and I'm not good enough, and I'm scared to be alone, or I'm afraid of getting sick, or what am I going to do if I don't have a partner, or whatever, that's going to create a world where that is a reality. To interpret it differently, we must come to know what God knows, the meaning that God has. This planet is a playground. You are an eternal being. You can do whatever it is that you want. There is no such thing as death, because when the body expires, then the body will have its death experience, but it's just the containers. Like when your car stops working, I mean, we don't suffer because the car died. It's time to get another one. When this body is used up, it's time for another one. If you want to incarnate, you get another body. But the ego makes us attached to our bodies and attached to our stories and attached to all the suffering that we have had as evidence. Oh, look at this is my life and all the terrible things that happened to me. Well, like attracts like. You keep getting more of that and expecting different results. And we know that that's insanity. The Course tells us ego is insane. So as we are in this process of moving through finding this new interpretation, in paragraph number 6, it tells us that only a constant purpose can endow events with stable meaning, but it must accord one meaning to all of them. We've got to find out what is it that we all want deep down inside and look for that one thing. Because if we're looking for our own separate ideas of what's going to make us feel safe and happy and whatever, we're all going to be at odds with each other. Then it goes on to say in paragraph number 4, a common purpose is the only means whereby perception can be stabilized and one interpretation given to the world and all experiences here. So until we all realize, number 1, there is no death. We're eternal beings. We're souls. We're creative. Source created in the image of a creator to create. And we're here to create an experience with one another. So let's start talking about what is it that you want deep down inside. Let's focus on really what makes your heart sing, because that's where we're going to find the common purpose. The common purpose is we want to be left alone. And interestingly enough, our Constitution says you are all made equal, created equal by our Father, endowed with the same inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, we have eternal life. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't worry if you end up with a short lifetime here, or you have a long one, if you get sick, if you don't get sick, if you have money, if you don't have money. Don't sweat that stuff. Get to the essence. Get to the essence that you are here. You're here to experience being human. Get in touch with the magnificence of that opportunity. Get in touch with, well, if I know that I am a creator like God created me, what can I utilize my imagination for? Who can I get together with and begin to co-create an idea of a new earth? So many have written books because they've gotten in touch with that part of themselves. Eckhart Tolle was inspired to write A New Earth. And when so many of them read that and went, oh yeah, that's what we want. Course in Miracles tells us we need to shift to, well, doesn't tell us that we need to shift. If we want to shift, we can have a happy dream. We can have an experience on this planet of collaboration. So it tells us we've got to find that one common ground. So let's go to paragraph 5. Escape from judgment simply lies in this. All things have but one purpose, which you share with all the world. The judgments that I'm watching right now with the whole political thing, I'm with her, I'm with him. The judgments of one another keeps people from listening to, oh, why would you want to listen to that? I want to read to you this message that I received that was absolutely amazing. I was just, it literally moved me to tears. And I was sharing with my daughter that I was so touched by this. So I received this text yesterday from a friend that I haven't talked to in forever. Last time that we communicated probably was 3 or 4 years ago. So she sends me this message. Hi, sweet Lina. I hope you are doing well and thriving in your new state. So maybe slightly weird and random. Oh, okay. So I'm reading what she wrote, but what she meant to say is, so this might be a slightly weird and random request. With the election coming up, I know that you are a Trump supporter, and I have really been wanting to talk to someone that I really respect about it, but I don't know someone that falls in that category. The only ones I know are those from my fundamentalist past. You and I share many of the same outlooks on life and have read much of the same material, A Course in Miracles, the raw material, etc. And I would love to hear the Trump side from that perspective. I have always been a middle of the roader, but have voted Democratic for the last few years. I am open to anything, really. If you would be willing to have a virtual coffee chat, I would love to connect with you and hear your side. Isn't that beautiful? So she is practicing what the Course is saying right here, where it says, escape from judgment. Instead of judging me, oh, she's a Trump supporter, even though she's spiritual. And I get that a lot. Oh, how can you be a Trump supporter because you're spiritual? How can I not when I understand what's going on? So anyways, so she, this friend of mine, practiced moving past her judgment, and we're coming together so that we can connect with one purpose. Because all that I'm going to share with her is not why I think Trump is so great. Trump has his faults. I have my faults. I cannot judge him as a person because I still have specks in my own eye that I still have to pull through. But what I do see is the bigger picture. I look at everything now from this perspective. And I look at people, where are they on this journey? And I see Trump as someone with a lot of courage. I see other people in a lot of fear, in a lot of need to control, in a lot of manipulation. Well, courage is higher in frequency than manipulation. I am not going to vote for anybody who wants to manipulate things. I want to vote for somebody who has the courage to break down those things that don't work. And that's all I'm going to share with her. I'm not going to share politics because I don't understand politics. I'm not into all the different things. I'm into looking at things based on a frequency perspective. My old ego used to love politics, and just like I used to keep up with baseball, that was my favorite sport to watch, and I knew stats. I don't know any of that stuff anymore because I was very egoic centered because I needed to be right about my team and my politician. Today, I don't need to be right about anything. I simply feel what has been placed in my heart to discern, and I go with that. But I use the chart of emotions. I use the frequency. I look for where are people vibrating, and that's what I am all about now, because it's all about the vibration. It's not about what you know or don't know. So then it goes on to say, sentence number 2, and nothing in the world can be opposed to it, for it belongs to everything as it belongs to you. That one shared purpose God gave us was to go to planet Earth and have fun. Go have a good time. Because we didn't know when we were born, our parents don't tell us, oh, welcome, little child of God. You're here just to have a good time. We're told this is your religion, and this is right, and this is wrong, and this is our financial status, and this is our side of the tracks. And then you grow up believing that that's your reality, not that you're here just to have fun. Now, little kids, they do just want to have fun. We even have a song, girls just want to have fun. However, when it is done by the ego, it is always selfish. I want to have my fun. I don't care what it does to you. Mom, I'm going to do my drugs, and I just don't want to feel my pain, but I don't care that it upsets the family. I don't care that this hurts anybody else. All of it is very selfishly oriented when the ego is in charge. So as it continues, sentence number 3, in single purpose is the end of all ideas of sacrifice, which must assume a different purpose for the one who gains and him who loses. The ego has ideas of sacrifice. The ego, if you pay attention to leaders, not just the ones now, but if you go back in history, because there is a very specific process that we keep repeating, empire after empire. That's why all empires eventually fall, because those who rise into power, they have their ideas of what the poor people need to do. You guys need to sacrifice so that we get to be okay. Do you remember watching the Hunger Games? The Hunger Games is such a perfect example. All the poor people down here, you guys struggle. You barely have enough food. You definitely don't have hardly any clothes. You don't have decent shelter. But us up here, we're the ones at the very top. Who made those people the ones at the top? They did, and we agreed to it. Because unlike how it happened with Marie Antoinette and Prince or King Louis, whatever, I forget his name, in the French Revolution, though that king and queen who were living up the life while the French people were starving to death, not enough food, eventually the French people took up the pitchforks and said, enough, even beheaded them, even said, okay, off with your head. We're going to take over. That was an act of courage. That was an act of saying, who do you think you are? Same thing happened with this country and our founding fathers. Our founding fathers said enough to the kings and the queens, the monarchy, and said, no, we're going to risk our lives. That's courage. I'm going to risk my life because I believe that I rather, give me liberty or give me death. How many of us today are willing to say, give me liberty or give me death? Most of us are too afraid because the ego has been conditioned into safety, into comfort, not into freedom. So we will sell our souls for a little bit of safety, but it's always going to be temporary because it's not of God. God's safety is that you're eternal. You shouldn't fear anybody. God's safety comes from knowing that we are here as creators and equal. But until we own that we are equal to everybody and stop idolizing some and start talking to them like, no, wait a second, I don't care that you make $40 million a year. I don't care that you're, one of the top people, magazine, whatever, special. I don't care. We're all equal. We cannot have access to our sovereignty because while we fear others or have idols that they're better than we are and that our safety depends on them, we haven't come inside to find where that safety and that power really lies. It's within. That's why we have to change our mind about God. God is not on a cloud, like we were told, deciding if you're naughty or nice. God is within, like Jesus said. Why do you think he was crucified? He was saying things that were very inconvenient for the rulers of that time. Those whatever they were called, Pharisees, I can't remember. They didn't want the average Jewish person to walk around and say, oh, I don't have to live by these 700, 800, 900 laws that they had. I only need to operate by 1, 2 laws, and they were very simple. Love your father and love your neighbor. Simple. That's all that Jesus said. Love your father and love your neighbor. Treat each other as equals. He was totally, completely against usury, which is that crazy taxation. Does that sound familiar? Don't we have crazy taxation right now? So some things haven't changed, So here we are being told, in single purpose is the end of all ideas of sacrifice. Why should some children have clean water and not others? Why should some countries have clean air and not others? We've got to start looking after each other because that is the way that we begin to really remember that we are one, that we are all the same. We are equal, endowed by the Creator with the same inalienable rights. But because we have different ideas of God, we have different ideas of who we are, we have different ideas of who each other is and who deserves and who doesn't deserve. Sentence number 4 says, there could be no thought of sacrifice apart from this idea, the idea of some deserve and some don't. And in this idea of different goals, and it is this idea of different goals that makes perception shift and meaning change. Have you ever wondered, one of the things that pulled me out of my delusion in politics and had me step back and look at things really from a bigger perspective was that why do we have 2 different parties and they have 2 different platforms? Isn't that an indicator right there that we're at odds and there's going to be a winner and a loser? Automatically, these want to tax the rich. These want to give everything to the poor. These want to have opportunities for just expansion, and these want to take it and distribute it. Why? These believe that you should have free healthcare. These believe that you shouldn't. Why? And why are we taking sides? Why shouldn't everybody have the same thing? Because Our minds are easily controllable when we believe that, we're part of this group and not that group. So we have to understand that we have contributed to our own demise, our own human suffering, because we follow the ones that we think know better for us. Then, because we're too afraid, we are afraid of God. We don't have a relationship with God when we believe God's going to punish us, and God should be feared. So cultivating a relationship with God is coming to know that God is love. God is loving. God is benevolent. God wants the same thing for everybody, endowed everybody with the exact same thing. First thing that we were endowed with was the power to create. We were created in its image as a creator. So we got to recognize that we can't blame anybody else. That's the first thing. Come back and say, okay, I'm going to take full responsibility for what I think, because it causes how I feel. And that makes me act in a certain way. Happy people don't hurt anybody. Hurt people go around hurting others because they don't want anybody to be happy because they're not happy. So we've got to get to the bottom of what is going on in our relationship with God. So sentence number 6 says, in one united goal, does this become impossible? For your agreement makes interpretation stabilize and last. Let's just go on to the next paragraph. How can communication really be established while the symbols that are used mean different things? Look at how crosses mean different things to different people. How colors, politics, you got a donkey, you got an elephant. They mean different things. But God gave everything one meaning, which was to be part of the playground for us to enjoy. But for us to enjoy, we must accept that we're one. So we must treat each other that way. We must be kind to each other. We must practice communication. And to communicate, you have to listen. And instead of attacking one another for different perspectives, you send somebody a message and you say, hey, I would love to hear why you see things the way that you do. And not to try and change your mind. I'm not trying to change her mind. I'm just going to share what I believe. And then she gets to decide, does that sound better for her? I don't care who anybody votes for. If you vote for somebody based on you feel in your heart that this is the right decision for the greater good of all, do that. But somebody who is doing things for the greater good of all is not interested in attacking somebody else, because they don't fear that if the other one gets in office, that they're going to hurt you. They're like, okay, well, then if it's their turn, it's their turn. When we trust God, there is no fear, there is no worry, there is only the certainty that all is well in the big picture. The little picture may get a little shaky for a while because we have to deal with the consequences of our choices. But most people are making choices not because they have practiced discernment, but because they're coming from fear. And from fear, they want protection. And it doesn't matter where it comes from. They will sell their soul for protection. I know I did. I stayed in jobs that I didn't really like for the money because I thought that kept me safe. I stayed in relationships that were not the best for me, but I thought that kept me safe. I did things because I thought it kept me safe, but they were not in integrity with my soul. So we have to do like the Course says. Don't alter the information, but begin to accept it as it is written, and you will have a shift in perception. You will experience a miracle. You will not be the same person. You will not think the same way, but you will become a light in the world because you will have accepted the purpose God gave you. Sentence number 2 says, the Holy Spirit's goal gives one interpretation, meaningful to you and to your brother. And that's what's so amazing about these teachings, is that when we understand that there is only one goal, and that is for everybody to live freely. And because until you're free, you're not going to be happy. You're pursuing things, but you're not going to be happy. Happiness comes from freedom, and freedom comes from God, true freedom. Thus, can you communicate with him and he with you? This sister is connecting with something inside of her. I value you. I respect your opinion. We talk the same language. I want to hear what you have to say. Opening the door for a conversation. How beautiful is that? Then we can communicate. In symbols that you both can understand, the sacrifice of meaning is undone. In symbols that you both can understand, it's very simple. The Course tells us that words are symbols of symbols. The symbol of freedom, the peace sign. If we can connect with that symbol, we want peace. Let's talk about how do we do that? How do we create that? But it never, the beautiful thing about when we do things for the greater good of all, nobody has to sacrifice. Not in the God sense. If you interpret it according to God, there's no sacrifice. Not to the ego. Yeah, you may have to give up some things, and you may have to take austerity measures. That they may have to tax things or stop things or go into lines for things. But when you're doing it for the greater good, you don't mind. Like today, we didn't have electricity. Everybody just was in helping one another. What do we need to do? And it's just so beautiful. The neighbor came over. I have no signal, nothing. I can't reach my wife at work. Okay, come over here. What can we do? Let's have my daughter text her friend and find out that she's okay, because there is a willingness to collaborate. All sacrifice entails the loss of your ability to see relationships among events. And looked at separately, they have no meaning, for there is no light by which they can be seen and understood. They have no purpose, and what they are for cannot be seen. This is so key for what's happening in the world today. And we're going to stop right here because we're already past that 11 o'clock hour. 11 my time, 1 o'clock yours. So if we look at this and we take it as it is stated here, all sacrifice entails the loss of your ability to see relationship among events. We are conditioned to focus on this event, this tragedy, that situation, that one over there. One of the things that helped me change my perspective around politics and pull out of the old game of politics that I used to play in was to step back, to look at all of it, to understand how we're repeating things that were repeated in the Roman Empire, to take a step back and to stop being so defensive about my team. But rather, I went back for several years. I began to study, to read the books, to listen to the videos that were done by people, scholars who research that. We have brothers and sisters who research history and bring to us information so you can see the cause and effect of situations. And every single empire that was led by tyrants, that was led by dictators, every single one of them, those people for a while were in charge and they were living the good life, like in the Hunger Games. They had the beautiful meals and the servants and everything was kumbaya for a little while. But the egoic greed and an insatiable need for power and utilizing it as force against others causes every empire to crumble. Humanity doesn't want to see that our empires are about to crumble because they're not prepared to realize that it's just a game. The Course tells us this is a game that we're playing on this planet. We are players. Every single one of us is creating a reality, but we can play nice or we can play with sacrifice and with fear and play ugly. The ego plays ugly, God plays nice. In God's new earth, in the happy dream that we can build, our resources will not go to war. They'll go in towards collaboration, communication. Our resources will not go into medical systems that keep people sick. They will go towards natural ways of maintaining health. Our education system will not go towards filling minds with limitation. Our education system will shift towards allowing each child to express himself as God intends for each of us to be. So we are in a time of bifurcation. There are those who are going to move towards this new earth. And so many of those systems are already there. We just have to find and connect with each other. The banking system is going to change to one that is very transparent, not manipulated by the few. The medical system is going to change. It's going to be about well-being. It's going to be about natural things. It's already there. The political system, it's already in certain places there, where communication, where you do what the will of the people wants. You are really a servant leader. The old ways of control, of greed, of I get to win, but you don't. This is good for me, but not for you. A justice system that serves me, but not you. That is falling by the wayside. But before it goes away, it is going to collapse. These massive structures that are designed to eventually to implode, because look at history, it repeats itself, are falling. They're showing cracks. It is going to be fascinating. The next couple of years, we're going to see people taking sides in a bigger way. Those who are committed to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because they know that we're all created equal and we listen to God, not some person who thinks that they're our savior or thinks that they're in charge. And those who are out of fear, they'll sell their soul because they don't have a relationship with God. They don't know God the way that we have come to know God. And they're looking for an external idol to tell them what they need to do to be okay. The world is bifurcating. What side are you going to be on? And there's no right or wrong side. It's just what ride do you want to get on in this amusement park? If you want to go into the haunted house, it's okay. Nothing wrong with that. You can stay there until you decide that that's not what you want. Or you go the path of finding the truth, use discernment, and come up with a new interpretation. That is the new beginning that we are upon. That's why this title for this chapter is the new beginning. That's why this section, it's the new interpretation. I thank you for your courage to be willing to question what you believe, so that together we can find the truth and collectively operate in that way. That is the only thing that will end suffering. That is the only thing that will bring about world peace, because you cannot come up with something that benefits some at the expense of others. That will not lead to liberation. That's to continue to take sides. Liberation, we must treat each other the same. Everybody deserves the same. The life, the liberty, the freedom that was endowed to us by our Creator is what we all need to preserve. And when everybody feels that they have that, we all live from our best selves. It's a given. It's a given. So the systems that oppress, the systems that make it difficult for anybody to experience that, they are falling. Hallelujah. All right. If anybody has any thoughts, comments, unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will be here next week, hopefully with a little less excitement about the electricity. Next Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern time. If you want to watch old episodes, they're all on Lina Orlando in YouTube. Love you all so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Mwah. See you later, sweetie.
Bye.
Bye.